We welcome Starla Brown, the State Director of Americans for Prosperity, Mississippi. Starla, good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Good to see you too, Gerard. Great to be here. I just got back from a week in Charleston, South Carolina. So
beautiful city.
Yeah, beautiful city. Great doing some work over there with the team there, and kind of enjoying being by the water.
Yeah.
So yeah,
so much history in Charleston.
So
American
much
history.
It's right. It's right. You know, I remember I was driving down the interstate, all the historic signs and the different places, you know, the forts and the different areas you could you could visit. Unfortunately, I was there for deployment of work, so didn't get to see a lot of that. But yeah, great city and great people. We enjoyed having some conversations at the doors there with them, and good to be back home. Though it's always good to be back in Mississippi and getting ready for Christmas. I appreciate you sharing your decorations there for your own home. I look forward to that. From last year, it was the first time I'd seen it being back. But
we enjoy that. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's kind of a tradition, Julie and I, and so we doctor the house all up, and we like to share that with folks. So, all right. So hard to believe, but the legislature, less than 3 weeks away.
I know.
They're going to be in the Capitol and going to be, of course, debating and deliberating a number of issues. I've talked to several members of our legislature the last month or so and kind of getting primed up and ready for that. What's AFP going to be working on in the next legislative session?
Well, I think you and I chatted a little bit of this. One of the things we're watching is the PERS retirement system, and watching to see what those solutions look like as they consider how do we keep the funding an unfunded mandate, right?
Yep.
And how do we do that for the taxpayers, businesses, entities that are all involved? And appreciate the article that you put out. Once again, I thought it was a great way of breaking it down. We've shared it on our social media. And just a great way for people to go in and kind of understand what the system looks like, but also understand the problem. So we're just kind of watching that right now. I feel confident that everyone recognizes that we have to do something, and what that something becomes is where we're going to see where we can land. So, and then again, we're bringing back certificate of need law repeals, continuing to look at that as healthcare. As you know, we do a lot of healthcare policy at the federal level, and there are a number of bills that are being introduced out there. Some will probably make it through the House or have already made it through the House this year, and we'll continue to see that into next year. We believe a lot of the health care pieces will be solved at the federal level, that there's a lot of legislation there that's going to improve the access and affordability of healthcare by it's not this one silver bullet, right? When we talk about Medicaid expansion, and I know that that's a very contentious subject depending where you stand and on that piece, but to say that is the only thing that's going to fix the healthcare crisis, and by passing a Medicaid expansion bill, we're going to solve all the problems that it's taken decades to get to. We don't see that as the wherewithal. We have a website called the Personal Option. And you can just literally Google AFP, the personal option. It'll take you right to the website. And on that, we talk about the different things, like whether it's, price transparency, knowing what you're paying for, right? Healthcare is one of the areas where when you go in to pay for something, you don't actually know what you're going to pay, right? It's not like when you walk in other for-profit industries. So there's a lot of stuff coming along, but we believe certificate of need at the state level is one of the ways to create more of a free market environment for healthcare. Doesn't mean that people are going to run out tomorrow and open hundreds of hospitals across the state and force people out of business. That's not the idea with this. It is an idea of that supply and demand, right? Which is just part of simple economics. And we just believe that someone wants to come and invest their monies and open up a number of different pieces that are in that certificate of need program that are currently have to go through the state. That regulation or that barrier, if you will, to doing that should be removed. And so we're going to be talking more about that again. And if you'd love to get Kate Yates on the show sometimes, our deputy state director, he is I know you know him, and he's really working on that piece with our national coalition. So we're looking forward to that. And then next up for us is looking at what can education look like in Mississippi for the longer term. So we're going to be talking a lot about different pieces of our education system and where we see some improvements there.
Yeah, which, of course, as you well know, represents more than half of our general fund spending. Public education does.
Right.
And so the question is, what is the return that the taxpayers are getting for that investment? And that's got to be in focus. So with respect to the Certificate of Need programs, something I've been crusading on for a long time, and seem like we get close every year and just can't, including last year, and just can't get it across the finish line. There are a few states that still have Certificate of Need laws. What's about 2/3 of them, I think, still have them, right?
Yeah,
Started in New York in the 70s, as I
right.
recall, doing some research on that. It makes no sense that we have these laws, regardless of, honestly, whether or not we have folks out there lined up to open up new hospitals or clinics or healthcare services in general. The fact is, you shouldn't have to go request to the government permission to engage in a business like that.
Right. We have we had online for our state of West Virginia when we were working there, and we repealed certificate of need laws in South Carolina, where I was last week, and we're going to be bringing hopefully to the state here at some point some of the individuals, whether they be individuals who are impacted by certificate of need laws, legislators who were for removing and repealing that, some other individuals who played a role in that in South Carolina are going to be coming to our state to help us sort of understand how they got to that point. One of the things that we did earlier this year was we actually brought in, we have within our community, a brand called Concerned Veterans for America. And there's an impact of certificate of need laws in terms of the Mission Act, right, and the availability for veterans to not have to travel 2 hours to get health care at the VA if they could get it locally, right? And we've passed federal legislation for that. But that impacts them too, right? When there's not the ability for more clinics and more things like that. So we've been working with that Veterans Affairs piece as well. And we brought someone into the state to really talk through that, what wait times look like at the VA, what can happen. And so we think this is not just, it's not one prong. It's not one certificate of need law. There's, certainly 19 pieces that we've been looking at. And we did have a vote and committee got voted down around, so we were looking at healthcare and substance abuse pieces this past legislature.
Yep.
And, had one committee vote, got voted down. But we think that there's still a lot of talk and to be done there, and that this is something we want to continue to fight. It sometimes takes years for us to get to the point where we work out all those differences, but we look forward to having more conversations around.
Yeah, it got real close. Honestly, I thought it was going to happen. I was at the Capitol that day, and I saw the committee chairman right after the vote, and they were kind of dazed, honestly. I think the committee chairman thought going into the committee meeting that the votes were in place, at least to pass it out of committee and get it to the floor.
We thought the same, but I guess there were some conversations that happened behind the scenes, and it just didn't happen. So, but we've had conversations with some of those people on that committee, and we're working through that, and so they didn't vote for it, and we're hopeful that they're starting to maybe understand a little bit more about what certificate of need can mean for our state. So.
Well, hopefully we get something done there. Like I said, at a minimum, it's just the right thing to do. It's kind of hard to predict what the outcome would be in terms of attracting and serving as a catalyst for new and more health care is really what you're looking for to drive the cost down and increase competition and just increase access as well. Yeah,
sure. And look, if we just look at that mental health and substance abuse facility piece alone, we know there's a shortage of beds. And the legislature took some steps to help in that. But when you talk to law enforcement, and I, still having these same conversations since I got here around the fact that a lot of the people incarcerated need mental health treatment. They're not in there for, let's say, a particular crime that was committed. It's more, maybe they seem a nuisance to the people in their community because they're, walking around the streets and they maybe need to be in a mental health bed and to have treatment and to see what can be done. And so, that's a problem that we have to address.
Yeah, just locking them up doesn't seem
Yeah.
to be really changing the trajectory there. If you can hang around, we keep talking about
Sure.
some of the other issues that you guys are going to be working on with the legislature in
Okay.
the upcoming 2024 session and a whole new term. We got
Whole new
work
term.
to do. So we got Starla Brown, State Director of Americans for Prosperity. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth Studios. For joining us, we're talking to Starla Brown. She is the State Director of Americans for Prosperity of Mississippi. Okay, so Starla, we talked about PERS, and I agree with you. As you know, I wrote that article mainly just to call attention to it, just to say we
Right.
have a problem, we've got to address it, and kicking this can down the proverbial road even longer, it just makes the problem more intense and more difficult to solve at a later date. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I think the legislature is poised to address that in some way. And again, I agree with you. What that approach and what the ultimate solution looks like, as I said in the article, is probably a hybrid that would include a number of different policy changes and funding changes and structural changes in the model while protecting existing retirees. And I mean, I think everybody's on board with that. And those that are certainly within striking distance, a reasonable period of time from retiring, I totally agree with that. So that's a good thing. And then we talked about the Certificate of Need laws, which is, I think, does hamper the healthcare environment in the state of Mississippi. And it's something, again, that I know AFP, for as long as it's been in Mississippi, has been campaigning to repeal. And I have as well, for what that's worth. And we get close. We just can't seem to get it done. Of course,
we're going to stay in that good fight because we believe that the overall outcome is going to lead to more affordable, accessible health care. And, we've got some good stuff in Mississippi. I don't even sometimes think people realize, we have direct primary care here, right?
Yeah.
And that, like I said, there's a lot of pieces or a lot of solutions to bringing the cost of healthcare down. At the end of the day, it's about doctors and patients. It's not about all of these other barriers that we put in place that don't allow healthcare prices to go down. And frankly, if more opportunity of places opening up, that does create more jobs. I know sometimes the argument is that lots of places will shut down and there will be job loss, and we hear that. I hear that out of elected officials as well as people in the industry. The truth of the matter is that's simply not the case, and I don't see that in other states where it's been repealed. And so I think the idea of, like I said, there's not going to necessarily be this mass rush out to do different things, but people who want to come here and bring a healthcare business to the state and see an opportunity in places where it's needed, we want to make sure they have that opportunity to do so.
I think the concern that I have is that where we need mostly additional outlets providing care are in areas where most of the population is uninsured, impoverished,
Correct.
And unhealthy. So it's like, hey, come to this area. We need you here. By the way, everybody's sick and nobody pays. And I think that's a tough one. And so the question is, how do we address those specific areas? Because there is a fairly stark contrast in this state between the more urban areas where household incomes are higher and access to health care is better than the pockets of the state. It's a kind of a unique sort of distribution of our population in the state that we've got to address as well.
And we have a high percentage of people who are already on Medicaid, and so I understand it's a difficult problem. It's not. It is not a simple solved problem.
Yeah.
But I think there's some merit to looking at policies that open up opportunity.
I agree. Let the market work.
Let the market work and work itself out. It may take some time for us to see some results out of some of those pieces.
Yeah.
But if we apply all of the good policy, right, all of the things that we know make a lot of sense. Part of me says, "What's the harm?" Right?
I agree.
It's kind of the do no harm, right? Like we've just got to open that up. So we're looking forward to that. But,
I agree, and hopefully we can get that done because in maybe the first first session of a brand new term, when the next election's a long time away, is the best time to get some of these more thorny issues across the finish line.
We're excited. We're excited to bring that conversation back, and we look forward to that. We have a lot of new legislators coming in, new speaker. It's exciting times sometimes when you have that opportunity for sort of that change and coming together. And we hope that that's what we'll see. We're really excited to be part of that. And we look forward to working with all of the legislators, all parties, and talking about the good things that are going to make Mississippi a better place for us to be and live and raise our families. And
totally agree. So the ballot measure process is something that the Supreme Court has nullified, as you know, in the state of Mississippi. It's something I hear quite a bit about on the C Spire text line. Is this an issue that AFP is engaged on?
We've looked at it in the past. We haven't engaged. We've engaged in it sometimes. We haven't engaged in it too much. We didn't, this session, we didn't really see a path forward, but we're certainly going to be watching that as well, just like we are on the PERS piece, and see what happens. I know there's a lot of people out there. There's two ways to look at ballot initiatives. Does it take away from the ability, for legislatures to legislate, or does it give a voice to the people? And so I think that's something we're going to be working through. We certainly had it at one point. We know why. I think most people know why it left. I mean, obviously the reduction in population took away a congressional seat, and therefore the way our Constitution and everything else reads, we lost that ability. I think there are people who want to use that particular method for good, but then there's sometimes people who also want to use it to do some things that really sort of go against what the legislators are looking at in that process. So I think there's sort of two ways for us to approach that, but we're certainly going to be watching it.
Okay. What about tax reform? We got some significant tax reform done a couple of years ago, but we didn't get the income tax fully eliminated. Is this a priority for AFP?
Yeah. It definitely continues to be a priority. I kind of came in at the tail end of that last year, the tail end of session, and our message at that time was for the House and the Senate to come together and find a reasonable solution to eliminate the income tax. I'm personally impacted. I grew up in Mississippi. I certainly paid personal income tax when I was here early part of my life. Moved to Florida where we had no income tax, personal income tax, didn't pay it. So coming back here, there's an immediate hit, for having to pay that tax. I do believe that the elimination of a personal income tax makes sense, but we have to do it in a reasonable manner, and for us it's a priority. Yeah. So if there's a bill out there, we're gonna be engaged for sure. I think what we don't want to see is bills that come out that create tax swaps, and it's like begging from Peter to pay Paul, as they say. That kind of mindset. In that, well, we're going to eliminate the personal income tax, but then we're going to raise some taxes over here that impact people in a different way, or maybe in a way that impacts our businesses and that kind of thing. So we're not looking for a tax swap. If we're going to eliminate taxes, let's eliminate taxes. And the personal income tax is one that we'd like to see go. Yeah,
of course, the challenge always is, how do you do that in a thoughtful way and in a responsible way that doesn't put the state at risk as far as meeting its obligation and funding its necessary functions. And
it's easy when times are good to say, we have a surplus, we have this, we've been, ahead of what we predicted at times. But you also have to think about the rainy days when they potentially come. But, there's a lot of thought process around eliminating a personal income tax and how that actually can bolster the economy, right? So in the state. So I think we have to make sure that we have the right safeguards in place, and we have to do the right things. But we're for eliminating the personal income tax.
Okay. And I know several other states are either have or are looking at significant tax reform. It seems like we got the red states moving in the direction of reducing income taxes, and in the blue states, they're actually looking at increasing income taxes.
Yeah.
or taxes in overall, wealth taxes, whatever they can get their hands on and they can ram through, they're willing to do that. It seemed like they never met a tax they didn't like.
Yeah, well, when you look at whether it's a state budget or a federal budget, governments are not for-profit entities. They only take from the taxpayer, right? That is how their monies come in. They don't produce any kind of income, and so the problem is for a lot of people, they don't see it that way. They think
Right.
it's like the government's this great big bucket of money, and you cannot spend your way to prosperity. You cannot spend your way out of inflation. These are just not things we can do. So
Yeah, and that seems to be what the MO has been, certainly since this president's been in office. Starla, it's good to see you. Appreciate you coming on and sharing the priorities of Americans for Prosperity. I'm sure we'll be seeing you and your team down at the Capitol as the session gets underway.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Sounds good.
Appreciate
Thanks.
it. Coming right back, folks, in the Element Wealth Studio.